Peace, peace. This is Fonz Carter, who rhymes harder. I am from Western New York. That's further upstate. I am brother of the Hog Mob Ministries. Hooked on God, ministry over business. My testimony. I'll start with coming up. I had no church affiliation. So it just wasn't a part of my lifestyle. I didn't come up in a church. Really at some point, most of my younger life and up into my teens and even to my 20s, I used to believe Jesus Christ to be sort of like the Easter Bunny or, Jesus, Santa Claus. He just wasn't it was like a fictional character to me. So I didn't have a church background. I mean, I'm sure I went to church. I remember going to church here and there, but it was kind of like I was at my grandmother's house and we went to church. So I didn't believe in Jesus, and I not only didn't believe in him, I didn't really want anything to do with it. Matter of fact, I would have chose Santa Claus over Jesus at the time, because Jesus seemed to didn't really have no relevance in my life. That I was aware of. Let's be clear on that. I think that's very interesting to mention, because just where I'm at in life now and just understanding how real God is and the fact that Jesus is real, it's just interesting that I could start off at one end and then land on a totally different perspective and lifestyle, and just totally lining up to what I believe God's will is, which is the Bible. Coming up, I was a good kid. My mother always said I was well-mannered. You would have never guessed where my life would eventually spiral out of control and that I would eventually become a career criminal. I believe it started at around the age of, I would say, 14 years old. I started to do a little, little things, little robberies, little larceny, and assaults, little light stuff that we believed it was light at the time. I used to be out late nights in the streets with a lot of my boys who were either younger than me or maybe a year older than me. This was during the crack era, where our parents had their hands full. Let's just say that. So we were out in the streets being able to kind of do what we wanted to do. Eventually it progressed because the brotherhood with a few of my buddies became even tighter, because we were spending a lot more time with each other. And when I say spending time, there was no guardian around either. So we were pretty much young boys doing whatever we felt we wanted to do with all that energy. I was presented at one point with one of my best friends at the time. He had some new sneakers on, and when we met up, I was like, "Wow, when you get those?" And he was like, "Oh, I just got these yesterday." I was like, "How you get those?" Because both of us was broke. And he said, "Yo, I sold this stuff right here," and he pulled out at the time it was crack cocaine. I didn't know what it was. I'm like, "What's that?" He said, "This is crack." And I'm like, "So you was able to get them sneakers because of that?" And he was like, "Yeah." I'm like, what's the big deal about that? He's like, "Yo," and he said, "Fiends, they like it, And I'm like, "Serious?" I'm like, "Yo," he said, you can sell it." He said, "My sister got a bunch of it. Her boyfriend, up from the BX, he got a bunch of it. If you want some, I'll get you." I'm like, "Yeah, give me some." You know what I mean? Like, heck, yeah, if I can get me some new sneakers, because at this stage in our life, my clothes weren't really, it was an issue with my clothes. I'll just say that. And I really wanted new sneakers and new clothes. Just I'm a part of the culture. I didn't want to be the dude, the cute bummy dude, So I was willing to do whatever I could do, to upgrade my wardrobe. And crack was presented to me. And again, I had no idea what crack was. I had no idea what they were going to do with it. Eventually, I found out that they smoked it, but I still didn't even know the ins and outs of it. So he came back and gave me a bag of crack, told me how much I had to make, how much I had to give his sister, and how much I was able to keep. Okay, now, I was always a witty kid. And as I developed to a teen, I was a witty teen. So When I started selling the crack, I was witty. So, once the icebreaker came and I was finally got enough bravery to even sell the first piece of crack, because it was weird to me. Like, what do I do? Do I just stand on the block? What, do they come to me? Do I go to them? I literally was that lame. I didn't know, and at the time crack had just really like emerged, like as an epidemic. It was out there, but it really like rose to the surface around the year that I started selling it. So I didn't have much knowledge of it. But after a couple months or a summer or so, I was pretty good at getting rid of crack. My personality, I treated the users, whom we referred to as fiends back then, with dignity. I was like a young businessman, and they were my customers, my clients. So that helped me out, tremendously. I was able to rise in the ranks, still on a very small level, but still leveling it up, every couple months. One point, my dad popped up out of the blue in the summer, and I hadn't seen my dad maybe in 7 years or something like that. And I was so excited because, I loved this guy. I loved the stories that I used to hear about him, and he was kind of like a superhero to me. Although I didn't see him that much, I think that made me, even have, it made me excited to just see him, because, this is the guy that they say I look like, walk like, talk like, And he pulled up one summer, popped up on me. I was very excited. So he came by, picked me and my buddy up, and he said, "Yo, you gonna spend the night with me?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I'm gonna stay with you, Dad." So we went over to, he was staying at my uncle's house. So we spent the night there. And at one moment, my dad sat me down and he just said, "Hey, I was talking to your mother. She told me you out here selling crack." And although he wasn't around, I still I didn't feel close enough, and I didn't know what he was gonna say. So I just lied. I was like, "Man, my mother don't know what she's talking about. People be lying on me. I ain't selling no crack." And he said, "Hey, listen, son, I ain't been around. I'm not here to really like come down on you and discipline you. I just want to get to know my son. I want to know what you're into so I know what I'm working with." So I was like, all right, I felt he was telling the truth. So I said, "Yeah, Dad, I'm selling crack." And he was like, "Really? How long you been doing it?" I'm like, "I've been doing it now for about 6 months." He said, "What you working with?" And I was like, "I'm working with a quarter. A quarter." And at this time, I'm just talking a quarter ounce, so 7 grams. I just kept flipping 7 grams, at that point. And he got up, he went into the room, and talking to my buddy, he came back out, and he tossed a brown paper bag on the coffee table and hit the coffee table. He said, that's a quarter right there. Let me see what you can do with it." And I was like, whoa. And so I grabbed the bag and opened it up. And when I seen how much drugs was in the bag, I was like, "What the heck is this?" He had gave me a quarter key. He thought when I said a quarter, he thought I was referring to a quarter key. So he gave me a quarter key, and was like, "Let me see what you can do with this." And I was nervous, like super, super nervous, because I hadn't even seen that amount of drugs at that point. But at the same time, this is my superhero, so I wasn't about to tell him that I couldn't get rid of it. And I'm gonna show him that I can get rid of it. So I went out, took the drugs, me and my buddy left, and I got rid of the drugs in like a day or two. It was like some Miami crack. Cocaine was the best crack in the city. So it was fairly easy for me to get off of it. And I came back, gave him the money, then he kicked me out some money and gave me some more. And I never looked back, man. My dad ended up staying there for maybe a month. He stayed in New York, and then he was returning back to Florida, and he asked, did I want to come back with him? So of course I want to go back with you, man. I ain't letting you out my sight right now. I'm living my best life right now, And my dad showed up. Yeah, I'm gonna roll with you. So I went back with him, and I stayed maybe like a summer, and he didn't want me selling drugs in Florida, but I just went behind his back. At this point I was independent. I enjoyed the independence. just being able to do what I wanted to do. So I continued to sell crack around behind his back for maybe like 2 months. And eventually I told him when I needed to re-up. So I'm like, hey, so make a long story short, he was impressed that I was that young and I had that type of hustle and saved the money up. And when I presented him to like, listen, Dad, I know you're gonna be mad, but when you go cop, can you hit me for this money I got? He said, what money? And when I showed him the money, he was like, boy, you say this amount of money? Yeah. So hustle with my dad. He took my money and he started, putting it with his and copping and didn't last long though. To speed it up, we was getting money in Florida for a bit, and eventually we got raided. My dad ended up doing, I want to say Dad ended up doing about 10 years behind that. I was still 15, so I wasn't old enough to go to prison. But they did place me in a home, and then I was released after maybe like a week on and it wasn't an ankle monitor. At this point in Florida, they had like these wrist monitors. It was like a watch with a little monitor on it. And after a couple of court appearances, the judge agreed and said, listen, we having an issue with adolescents in the state of Florida. We're overwhelmed. The detention centers are overwhelmed. This is what we can present. If he leave our state and don't come back till he's 21, then we'll drop the charges. But he has to leave, and he has to leave within 14 days, I believe it was. So I agreed to it, and I flew back home. And when I got back home, it's funny, just within that little short period of time, it seemed like so much had changed. House seemed to be a little bit more crowded, a little less like home. Didn't have the feeling of home, people running in and out. And at this time, crack had invaded our house. The adults was, indulging in it on different levels. Some of them really smoked out. Some of them just, doing it on the weekends and here and there as a party drug. Nevertheless, it did infiltrate my home, and I noticed it immediately, and I didn't like it. I wasn't really that comfortable. So I said to myself, I got to do something to, get out of this. So I gotta get my money up, And I had only been home 5 days, and my man Tone Bennett, rest in peace. He was like the neighborhood dude. He was the littest, He was 18, I was 16 at this time. He was like, hey, listen, I'm about to go pick up a couple bricks. If you carry them back for me, I'll look out for you. Say no more. Sign me up when we leaving. And to speed it up, when we went to get that work, we ended up getting jammed up in Manhattan coming back on the bus station. I was 16 years old, and they arrested us. They gave, being that we didn't live in Manhattan, they considered us flight risks. So they gave me like $100,000 bail. I think his was $80,000 for whatever reason. But again, my household had been infiltrated by crack, so I know I wasn't getting out with no $100,000 bail. So I stayed in prison and had to fight the case. And that was a turning point in my life, because I had my first jail sentence at 16 years old. My first experience was with Rikers Island, and I didn't know what Rikers Island was. I wasn't familiar with Rikers Island, but when I got there, I was familiar very quick on what it was about. And that experience, it changed the fabric of who I was, because it was such a violent place that I was going to end up being I was either going to be a punching bag, or I either was going to get busy, and I chose to get busy, and it brought something out of me that, it changed the trajectory of my life. Because once I was released from Rikers Island, I never was the same. My regard for the human beings was just different, Not that I was this monster or anything, but it definitely changed who I was. And I only dove deeper into the drug game after that, just having that experience. And it wasn't until 2004 I was arrested with, they say, $500,000 worth of cocaine and a stolen 9mm. And I was looking at 30 years to life And I ended up taking a plea, and I was sentenced to 6 to life. And during that time, I did an extensive research on the Bible, just being in a cell, for 23 hours a day and having really nothing to read but the Bible. It really did something for me, and it did something to me. I was able to establish a relationship with the Creator. And that book just really kind of like guided me back out of that darkness, the place that I had lost myself to. So today, I'm a representative of Christ. I believe 100% in the Word. I believe that He allowed me to go through what I went through so that I could go back in those same areas. It may not be crack now, it may be, pills or whatever. And I could speak the language. I could share my testimony, and it would encourage others, man, to answer that calling. So again, that's why I sit here and share my testimonies, only for those who listen and see the God in me, knowing that if He did it for me, He can do it for you.